Juan Soto, 15 years, 765 million. Could be 800 million by the time he's done with escalators and incentives. He signs with the Mets. Big deal's being made of. It's being made of the Mets outbidding the Yankees. It's the Mets getting Juan Soto. It's all these different factors. And I think I'll pose it as a question because I've done this in the how do I phrase this? I don't want to be hyperbolic. Does Juan Soto to the Mets change much for me? Absolutely not. It doesn't really change anything. The amount of money, yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot of money. It's a lot of money to give to one guy. A lot of money to commit to a dude. But ultimately the money factor, the overpay, that's too much, this guy's worth that, the comparisons, it doesn't exist. It doesn't exist when Steve Cohen is the owner of the New York, because money to him is no object. $1 billion or $750 million in the case of Juan Soto's financial commitment is a drop in the bucket. That's like me pulling out, I would say like $500 from my bank. You would kind of go and then go, oh, well, I mean, it'll come back eventually, right? It's a lot of money, but it's like, I'll be fine. Same with him. So the whole overpay, it's too much. That doesn't exist. However, if I was an owner of a team and I had unlimited money, probably rather allocate those resources and that total amount of money and that 51 to 55 million a year into 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 other guys, as opposed to one other dude. The hype around Juan Soto came from when he was at such a young age, able to consistently perform at the highest level over the course of his first 6 years in the MLB. The first 3.5/4 with the Nationals, the 1.5 with the Padres, and then the 1 with the Yankees. What I'll say is this. Do I think Juan Soto changes the outlook for the rest of the league? He agrees to a deal with the Mets. And I think the answer is not at all. Baseball is a sport where you can assemble a literal super team. You can assemble 9 of the best players on one team and come up short in terms of winning a championship. By the way, last season, the Mets had the highest payroll in baseball. What was that? Yep, that's right. They had the highest payroll in baseball. And yet they struggled in certain parts of the season. They kind of had the underdog feature of them going into the playoffs. They were going and running off that tagline of the scrappy old Mets, when in fact they had the highest payroll and they came up short. So the point is, you can have the highest payroll, you can have a lot of the best players, and you can still come up short. Why? Because baseball is a complementary, full-blown prime example of a team sport. Juan Soto is on the Mets. The Mets are going to be better now than they were without Juan Soto. Brett Baty is going to get as many bats per game. Maybe not Brett Baty, because I don't know. We'll see. I'll put it this way. Starling Marte is going to get as many at-bats per game as Juan Soto. Maybe not as many total in the season, because yes, guys at the top of the order get more at-bats. I get it. The point still stands. There's going to be a bunch of games in the Mets season where Starling Marte is going to come up with multiple base runners on multiple times and have an opportunity to change the outcome of the game with his at-bats versus Juan Soto coming up early in the game, early in innings with nobody on base, where his potential impact is actually going to be lower than some of the guys lower in the lineup. So the point is, does Juan Soto change everything in baseball? Does him go to the Mets make the Mets immediate World Series contenders? Does it make the Mets the biggest threat in the National League? This, and this. It doesn't do any of those things. No, it just doesn't. He is one dude. He's one dude. Offense in baseball is the most valuable thing you can have. He gets on base at a really high clip. Totally get it. That's super valuable. He has a bunch of slug in his game as well. Totally get it. Super valuable. Career OPS guy at or above 900 in most seasons. That's awesome. He can't run. He can't field. He has an average arm. He's a great hitter, but it's a massive overpay for a guy that I'd rather allocate those resources elsewhere. Overpay as a term doesn't exist with a guy like Steve Cohen because money is no object to him. So I don't really want to say that or frankly hear it from anybody else. Money doesn't exist in Steve Cohen's world. So Juan Soto was going to go there no matter what. But in terms of Soto going to the Mets and how that changes things, I think it changes things almost zero, almost negligible. Because you know who's better than the Mets still and now? Maybe the Dodgers, maybe the Braves, maybe the Padres, definitely the Orioles, definitely a handful of other teams across the league. One dude in baseball doesn't change your entire team. The exception to that rule would be somebody like Shohei Otani, who signed for less total money. Why? Because Otani can run. He can steal 50 bases. He just did. He can hit 50 homers. He just did. And he can pitch. He can go into a game and literally single-handedly win it. He can get on the mound. He can throw 7 shutout innings with 13 punch-outs, go to the plate 4 times and hit 2 homers, and nobody has to do anything else, and the team will win the game. That, to me, that type of game, which has existed previously in Otani's career, that game by itself is worth $500,000 to $1 million per game that's achieved. So now we sit here and Soto doesn't pitch. Soto can't run. Soto doesn't play a premier position and impacts the game absolute zero on the defensive side. Offensively, he's one of the best. But to act like or to contend Juan Soto to the Mets changes the landscape of baseball, it was, first of all, pretty much expected. Second of all, makes the Mets better, but still leaves them with a ton of holes. And third of all, doesn't even make them a top 3, probably top 5 team in the National League, depending on how you look at it. They're a great team. They got a bunch of dudes. Who's going to start games for them next year? Who's going to play first base for them next year? Who's going to play third base for them next year? There's so many holes in that team still. They're better. They're going to be contenders. They'll be solid. But if you're asking me right now, today, December 2024, after Soto to the Mets, give me Dodgers or Mets in 7. I'm going to go Dodgers in 5. We just saw it. Right now, you give me Padres or Mets. I'm going to go Padres in 6. You give me Braves or Mets, healthy, Braves in 6. Like, that's what I'm saying. So Soto doesn't change the entire landscape. The amount of money does, and it does change the market. But for me, Soto is a guy that needs the pieces around him in order for his full spectrum of impact to be realized. That's where I stand.